This is a special event. Occasionally, we have the opportunity to have distinguished artists join the program, and Ahmet and I were hanging out in Berlin this summer and talking about this notion of artist as curator. And Ahmet said, "Well, I've done several projects like that." So I said, "Come to New York." And voila, here he is. So I'm going to read a short introduction. So Ahmet Öğüt is a world-renowned Kurdish artist born in Turkey, now living between Berlin and Istanbul, whose multidisciplinary and conceptual art intends, as he puts it, to, quote, create shifts in the perception of the common, end quote. Ahmet's work has been exhibited at countless museums and Kunsthallen, including the New Museum, the Stedelijk, Namsol Museum of Art, New Contemporaries in London, the Van Abbe Museum, State of Concept in Athens, Kunstverein, Dresden, Kunsthalle Charlottenburg, and many others, as well as in the Liverpool, Istanbul, and Berlin biennials, and right now in the Sterische Herbst 25 Festival in Graz, Austria. Upcoming exhibitions with his work are the Singapore Biennale and What Are Our Collective Dreams at the National Gallery of Art in Warsaw. He's the recipient of many awards, including a Visible Award, Visible being a foundation funded by the Città dell'Arte, Fondazione Pistoletto, and Fondazione Zegna, for his project, The Silent University, a nomadic learning site run by asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants, along with a debt relief program for students. I've long been fascinated and often, I have to say, amused by Ahmet's work. And in fact, I included him in the events I curated for the opening of the Venice Biennale as far back as 16 years ago in 2009, when he also co-represented Turkey. And he's spoken of his works as having developed over the years from, quote, object-based artworks to platforms, campaigns, debates, rumors, challenges, failures, and surprises. As a recent example, I'll just mention the new piece for Sterische Herbst titled Sports Club of the Forbidden Colors, that in a typical way uses irony to point to the absurdity and trauma of our contemporary political conditions. As the work is explained, there are countries where certain color combinations can't be shown because they evoke banned or unwelcome flags, like the Kurdish and Palestinian flags, or the rainbow flag representing LGBTQ culture. So Ahmet introduces these colors through off-center sports, such as bed racing, hobby horsing, and extreme ironing, turning their local clubs into the most curious beacons of protest. This kind of oblique re-representation of the world to show, excuse the pun, its true colors, has always made Ahmet an extraordinarily agile and acute critic of the carnivorous carnival of contemporary life, all the more potently for his ways of turning authoritarianism into tragicomic burlesque. Tonight, in keeping with his talk here in the MA Curatorial Practice program at the School of Visual Arts, Ahmet will discuss projects he's made that also include other artists, highlighting, as I said, the practice of the artist as curator. We'll converse shortly afterwards and then open questions to the audience afterwards. So please welcome Ahmet.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, clear enough. Well, this talk 16 years ago, when I was invited by Steven, was my first lecture, let's say, conversation in an international platform in English. So I hope I improved a bit since then. some of my skills about giving lectures and talk about my practice. And I really appreciate that you were one of the first person that see that I could do that, and I can at least still try to do that. So I'm gonna share the screen and go to the presentation. Today, I'm not gonna talk about in general like my artistic practice, like in a typical artist talk, artist lecture, but one aspect of my practice, which is basically the curatorial practice within the artistic practice. How I create works that are themselves as installations that includes, or platforms or spaces that includes other artists' works, often from the collections of those institutions or by invitation that are included within my own work. So this has been a bit confusing practice for collectors, for institutions, but I will give you some examples of what it means. Here, there's a sample of how I looked at the practice of curating. I Googled the two words appointed curators, and the first two pages, all the pictures, they had the same posture, which is basically, crossing arms. So a lot of curators and directors, when they're appointed, they had this posture. And I didn't have to do deep research. So I just cropped the first images I found, and I recognized some of the curators over there. And after that, it became a meme, also. And it spread. So it was something taken from the internet, and then it went back to the internet. But also, it went back to the real life. So a lot of curators, after this work, this was 2022, appointed, they stopped doing this posture. And some of them refer this way. So now I see they are more standing like this and arms down or open. One actually had the arms wide open. So I really like this welcoming change for the curators especially when they're getting new positions. Before I dive into this curatorial practice, I need to go down because there are also online friends listening. I will give one example. Other example you mentioned in your introduction, the project I did in Graz. But meanwhile, I was doing another project in London, just to give you an idea how my brain works as an artist, like just as a total artist. Let's start here. This is a project I've been developing since 1 year, and just 10 days ago, I think approximately, we were able to make it public. But last spring, it's basically a campaign and an installation and an award that I created within the framework of this project. And the invitation came from Art on the Underground, which is an art institutions within the Ministry of Transportation in London, established since 1920s. So they have been going to the artists and asking them to do works in the subway stations all over London. And they also came to me with this very open invitation. So I went to London last year, visited multiple stations, and some of the works became invisibly permanently there and visibly at the same time. I visited those works, I visited those stations, and one of the first thing came to my mind when they asked me, like, what would you do in one, this is very public spaces we are talking about, how many millions of people passing by these stations every day. I thought about this incident in Rotterdam in 2020. There was this small town where you can see the last subway station at night. Driver goes off the rail and accidentally, it was going to crash, but accidentally it lands on a sculpture, and the sculpture saves the train and also saves the conductor. So remembering this story, I really wanted to ask this question: can art save lives? Literally, not only metaphorically, not only in a way that it could be healing or that kind of But I wanted to go beyond this idea of, as I try to do always in my work, this symbolic aspect, like limitation for art. You know, when we see the art only something posing questions and only doing symbolical stuff and nothing beyond that. A lot of artists, unfortunately, when they give fancy interviews, they just say that, "Yo, I'm just posing more questions," or of course, we can't change the world through art, but you know, we can at least ask questions or something like that. This is not what I do. I try to look for examples from life, everyday life, and through other people. So I pose the question back to the people, and I ask anybody living in London have stories similar to this train incident when the sculpture that's in the shape of whale's tail saved somebody's life. If you have any stories similar to that, please submit your stories. And I designed this artwork, art award, not for artists, but for public, whoever tells the best story, best storyteller from the public. And we have received multiple, so we did first call with poster campaign, and we have received many stories, in fact. And this is the painting I made that later installed in the station, at real size, and with the sounds of trains all the time passing and people passing by, and it looks like a poetic piece when you don't know what it's about, Saved by the whale's tail, saved by art. But if you come closer, you get this brochure, and in the brochure you find the winning story and other stories people submitted. For if you pass by London this year, it will stay for a year there, and you will see the work. So I had to really believe that there are stories out there, and I have to really believe that people will take this serious enough to submit their stories. And a lot of the stories are really personal stories, by the way, as well, like really something you should be brave to share, that it will go to such public platform. So it was very important for me to take that risk, put the trust in people, and then they trust the concept and the idea, and they trust back and they contribute. So the winner was Helen Whitley, and she's a doctor and an artist, trained artist, but she's also a practicing doctor based in London. And her story, The Bracelet, won the prize. And basically the story is based on her real life experience as a doctor, when there's a patient coming to the emergency department of the hospital, and she sees a bracelet that the patient is unconscious, and they're supposed to put the patient in the MRI machine. And she sees the bracelet, and the bracelet, because of the beautiful and aesthetic shape of the bracelet, and then she looks at it again, and she sees that this is actually a medical device, which the patient didn't want to wear a medical device. So his daughter designed something beautiful for him to wear every day. And then she sees that it is actually a pacemaker, and it's very dangerous to put, makes it very dangerous to put this person inside the MRI machine, because it could blow the heart and the brain. So she says, everyone stop at that point. So first, this aesthetic attraction turned into life-saving experience because of the double background of this doctor. When she was young, in the story, she says, her mother says, you have to choose either becoming a doctor or an artist, and at the end she becomes both. And I found it very poetic in this story as well. Like she says, medicine teaches you to look fast, and art teaches you to look again, So that this was the winning stories. This was the surprise for me as well, because I want to be surprised also with the project, with my own projects. Otherwise, it's not interesting enough for me to be the only storyteller, be the one who manipulate the whole situation and, know the end already. So the work needs to be shaped by everybody as a common experience, and it should go beyond also my imagination. So the way I was inspired by the original incident in Rotterdam, I mean, it's also keep inspiring. The circle goes on, like somebody passing by from that small town who actually witnessed the real incident, took a picture there, and then goes to London and sees my work, and then takes the brochure back to Rotterdam and takes a picture with the whale's tail, would save the train and send it to me, and because he says I would enjoy this moment, this kind of beautiful exchange that I would not plan, and I cannot plan, and I cannot foresee in advance, but it really then reminds me that this project had to happen and needs to happen. So there is a purpose there, and I try to pay attention in my projects that this is always some sort of I am the witness of my own project. Also, afterwards, I'm done with it. So it goes out there and it becomes something of belongs to the common. So now going to this topic of today, when often I'm put in situations. So it's not like, hey, I want to work with collections, or I want to curate shows, or I want to work with other artists' works. But sometimes some curators come with an idea, a very artistic idea already. So this was an institution, a foundation in Rome, Fondazione Giuliani. In 2010, they came to me. It was a fresh foundation initiated by a private collector who is focusing on arte povera and a lot of conceptual works from that time. But they wanted to invite younger artists to respond to this collection. So the invitation was that, like, come, do anything you want with our 200 plus artworks from all these historical artists, and make a solo show inspired from the collection. Then I ask, can I really use the actual works, not just like visit the collection and look at them and get inspired, but can I include actual works in the exhibition? They said yes. Then I picked 10 artworks from this selection. This is the surrealist frame of Peter Coffin is among the other cheap frames I bought in Rome. So I made a larger installation. I kind of like decided to, without changing the work. So you open the package, you get the work, you install it in the exhibition. Nothing happens to work, but I change entire context of it. So I either multiply, I expand, or I transform it, or I add another element. So this was really playful first experience working directly with a collection and working directly with other artists' works, This is another piece I really appreciate, Giovanni Anselmo's piece, which was at his private office. He didn't move for like 15 years, this artwork. He was scared to move because it won the best painting prize years ago, and it is an empty canvas balancing 200 tons of two rocks, which you need at least 6 people to move each one of them. So it's super heavy, just hanging fragilely on top of the canvas. So you are even afraid, you could be afraid to move this at all or touch this work at all. So this very tangible and sensitive work is standing there, and he's afraid every day it might break one day. So I said, well, we need to move this to the foundation, and he agreed with that. He was very scared, but he agreed with that. So we had a little crane and multiple people came, and I said, I'm going to put this bottle underneath with a little letter inside. So in case this breaks during the exhibition, that's my apology letter. Nobody knows what I wrote in it, but then they can read it when the bottle breaks. So this tension, I kind of multiply the tension as he is experiencing as a collector, and to the experience of the visitors as well, whoever happened to be there, we would catch the moment that the work breaks. It didn't break, but this performativity of this painting that looks like a sculpture was really dear to me. And then I really had fun. This was a work by Marlene Abramovich with a Scorpio on her face, and I just put the Scorpio horoscope of that year next to it, as a conceptual white on white text next to it. Or this is a video piece by Sisley Jaffa, which is a bicycle burning in Afghanistan, and he filmed this, and I just burned the entire room with tires. So we just made this burning smell. So the video, I said, okay, it's beautiful, nice. You watch this very minimal conceptual video. I wanted to bring one element missing in the video, which was the smell. So we made this room that totally smells like burned up. And then there was this Armani trousers by Mr. Cantor, and it has this sticky plants in it. So the task is, if a collector buys this piece, they need to find these plants, and you need to watch your hands because it really makes it itchy forever, you know. So and really take care of the plants. Like every day you need to water them, you need to bring fresh ones. So the creator is kind of like being tortured by this work. And then foundation was in typical apartment house, on top of it, like you know, and there was a lady washing clothes every day, hanging. So you enter the foundation, there's always some washed clothes, Italian style. And I decided to buy cheap clothes and make this trouser expensive artwork disappear between those clothes. So I was really playing like, what can I do with another artist's work? So it was really playful experiment. And this is a work by Joseph Kossut. And I thought about buildings under construction. They always cover it with the image of it, a little bit like Kossut style. So I took the image photo of the work and covered the work with the photo, and you just see the light coming and the actual work is underneath. Anyways, it's now I'm jumping to another work because this was like 2010 and 2013. This work is not directly linked to the collections and so on in the first edition, which was like I was asked to do an educational project in an art fair context, and I saw that this context, like in 3 days, you cannot really do an art educational, you know, experiment, like really a serious one. So instead, I asked, like I saw they have multiple VIP lounges in Dubai at the time. So they all have different hierarchies among them. And I saw that I just asked them, do they have interns? And they said, yes, they have interns. How many? Like around 70, 80 interns. And are they paid? They said, no. Do they have a place to hang out? They said, no. I said, okay, let's make a VIP lunch only for the interns that they can hang out. And I use all my budget to create this space where you can play games, and there could be a massage service and chocolate fountain, and but also a set of lectures, you know, of well-known curators or artists who are coming to the fair. Other than that, nobody else is allowed to this space. So after this 3 days experiment, it was basically based on rumor. So the guy from Rome, Mr. Giuliani, was in Dubai, and then he says, "Oh, Ahmet has a work. I want to see it." And then he goes, and they reject him to enter. So he gets very angry, and he goes. He sees me 1 hour later in the fair. He's like, "Ahmet, I was so angry. They didn't let me in. This is such a great work." Yeah, I scream at them, you know, like they didn't let me in. So he loved not being allowed with all his, you know, privileges. Anyways, the reason I added this here, the second edition I did, it was in Pompidou, and they wanted to do a longer version, not for 3 days, you know. So we had really pretty nice space, and I decorated the space with everything, like a lot of things from like director's room and department, and not only that, like so all these things were already in the museum. We just decorated with that, and I asked them, do they have artworks that are never exhibited in the collection? Like, I thought maybe they can give me a list of 100 works that are never exhibited, and they gave me like a really thick printed book, basically, of a few thousands of works never exhibited, never seen in public, but it has been sitting, they have been sitting in the storage. So I posed this question to multiple, I posed this question at Harvard's museums as well, and they also have 5,000 artifacts and artworks never exhibited. I posed this question to multiple institutions and museums, and literally there are some works, they never go back to storage, you know, they always either tour between museums, and they are always on loan, and other works, they're never on display. So I found it very interesting that this is a factual thing. Who wants to have a work that ends up in a museum but never seen? That's like, you know, the graveyard. That's the grave of the artwork. It's like a guarantee that this work will never be seen unless somebody realizes that and they take it out again. So we found all these random works. They're all from Centre Pompidou collection. Nobody knows how they entered the collection. Nobody knows who picked them, you know, which director, which year, and they look so random, and it's very interesting. So we decorated the intern VIP lounge with those works. Yeah. Now coming back to US, in 2014, I was asked to think about a project, like what is the most urgent thing to address at the time in USA. And I was having conversation with Krzysztof Wojcicko, who is also a professor and amazing artist, a Polish artist, who does a lot of works in public space. And he recently worked with war veterans. And then at that time, and we were just talking, and we both had this idea of like, yes, student loans, student debt was the most urgent thing to address. It was also, you know, not long after Occupy Wall Street, and I was here during that time. I was lucky enough to witness the Occupy. And right after Occupy, there was a collective called Strike Dep, and they were made of like artists, lawyers, other people who realize it's such a privatized system. So government doesn't go collect, you know, they know that government doesn't go collect these loans from the students. So they there's this private companies, in between companies, they are appointed and they buy the loans very cheap. So Strike Debt decided they can, by fundraising, few hundred thousands of dollars, they could fundraise and they could abolish around 30 million value dollars student loans, and they could tell people your loan is abolished, you know, through this organization. So I collaborated with them. I said I want to invite artists who make coin-operated sculptures, or you know, they are basically donation boxes, but they are sculptures. So this is a sculpture by Martha Rosler. So they design artworks based on this idea for my project. So this is their sculptures. These are their works, you know. Natasha Sadrhagyan did this really beautiful shredded money sculpture, which was a donation box made of shredded money in the value of $10,000, I think, and then it turned into boxes, and then the boxes turn into, you know, fundraising. Or Dan Parzhowski is this transparent plastic bag that has a degree. The more full it gets, and then it tells people you are responsible, you are a friend, you are a super friend, you are an angel, you are my God, if the plastic bag is full of money. So there was this ideas. I invited openly, like, you know, artists to produce their own ideas within this concept. So the whole concept was financial strategy, long-term strategy, basically. I work with a lawyer and we design a contract. If these works ever sold in the art market, they would infinitely fundraise money also for the student organization, for the activist organization, you know, to continue their innovative work. So not only these are simply sculptures that are donation boxes or they are coin-operated machines, but also their market value would double fundraising for the same cause, you know, in the future as well. So in that sense, the work is ongoing as long as the sculptures exist, and whenever they enters the art market, they can also fundraise like that. But for a long time, they were traveling between museums and institutions. So each time they are exhibited, that means we fundraise for the organization. And later, I was invited to do the UK version, because in UK, like, we want to be like United States. So after 1998, they introduced tuition fees. It was all free before, and they privatized the education system in a similar way as the US. So they asked me that this is also urgent here because it's becoming to happen here too. You know, this was before Brexit times, but it was already slowly changing. It wasn't as bad as US, but it was really changing. So I was invited to do that within the framework of a touring show, British art show, that was touring all over UK for 2 years. So it was a good occasion to, and we found a sister organization that has the same Jubilee Adapt campaign. So we could fundraise for them. And I invited this time, Susan Hiller was still alive, Susan Hiller, Goshka Majuka, and Liam Gillick to do sculptures with their ideas. And this is Goshka's telescope. And this is Liam's piece based on Lazzarato texts on Depp, and Susan Hiller's listening machine, that they would all collect money. And we did fundraise each show. It was during the touring. So you see like when in Rome, Mr. Giuliani asked me how he could buy these works that he already owns. When I did the interventions, it's like, I like this version. And I'm like, look, you cannot just make without asking me. So this is another work now. But he's like, but I already own the work. But I was like, but if you want to display this way, this works, it is then my version of the work, So this is always this question sometimes happens, whose work it is. It's my work, or am I the curator, or am I the, someone who creates that platform and other artists contribute. And I like that when it gets a little confusing there, especially like financially, economically, and not only like as direct like surplus value. Something very complicated, I will try to explain. Simple and complicated. I have to check the time also, be aware of the time. How am I doing with the time? Fine. Yeah. So this is a work I did first time in Wanabe Museum in 2015. I knew the museum is very experimental with reimagining how the collection is displayed in the museum. It was one of the most and still innovative museum, how to rethink the collection, how to display the collection, how to really communicate with public in this small Dutch town. And I asked them, again, like the incident story, I was reading an academic article, and it started with this story about Bakunin proposing this idea in 1849 in Dresden. So it's Bakunin's contemporary art idea from 1849. He's in Dresden writing for a newspaper, local newspaper, and at that time they were making barricades parallel to Paris Commune. First time these barricades were made as a defense mechanism, first time. And artists, opera singers, they were all involved, by the way, and against the Prussian army. So when the army approached, Bakunin had the idea they would destroy the barricades, of course, but if we put original artworks from the museum collection, the army would hesitate to destroy the barricade. So he proposed his friends, activist friends, like, let's borrow some original works from the National Museum and put it in front of the barricades. And they think it's a silly idea, and they just don't do it. They're like, we don't have time for stuff like this. So it never happens until I propose it in Eindhoven, like a lot of many, many years later. I said, well, we can put it as part of my exhibition at the time. We can bring stuff from the junkyard, 2 cars and a lot of like parts, fences, police fences, and tires and bricks and broken glass and all kinds of things, even sticks from previous exhibition from Liam Gillick's installation. So we can put things there, really construct a barricade, which I also witnessed a lot in real life during Gezi uprising in Istanbul. So this was like only 2 years after that I saw that people can construct these things in no time. So it takes a couple of hours to make a massive barricade. And then we include original works from the collection, but we are still in the museum. So first of all, it was amazing that this museum, not the curators only, but also head of collections, we just had 1 hour conversation, video call, and they said, yes, let's go for it. So they agreed to include a real Picasso, a Léger, Marlene Dumas, Liziski, like original, very high value artworks on top of the barricade inside the exhibition. And I said, this is just the 50% of the work. Installation, and the original works is just half of it. The other half of the work is the conceptual contract, and the conceptual contract is also written together with the museum's lawyer. I saw recently actually her. I was very happy to see her again. So she was the first lawyer thought this contract can be drafted. And the contract says if there's an uprising in the future in that country, activists can come and request the work to loan the work back to the streets. And there are some details, we had to go through details. So the lawyer told me, okay, we need to add here on what grounds this uprising is happening. So we need to make it based on basic human right declaration. So it's not like a right-wing uprising, or it's not like an absurd uprising. It's a real uprising when people's basic human rights, or it's about people's basic human rights, are abused. So we made it based on this declaration, and we gave few examples also. So from the eye of a museum lawyer, it was possible to draft this contract. And then a museum didn't buy it, but they exhibited. So this is the first museum to exhibit this piece. And then all the other museums, institutions wanted to show the work, but we had this unsigned contract with it. So these are still proposals. It's like Bakunin's proposal, it is not part of the collection. As long as it's not part of collection, it is not museum's responsibility to respond in the future, They need to take the ownership. Still, the works are their own works, the paintings, original works. But then they come in the framework of this work, That means it's in the condition of this work. So once it enters any museum's collection, then they have to deal with it. So this is the Ludwig Museum in Köln, and this is Sterling Museum. I actually did one, I have to show you quickly. I did one in US too. In 2022 in Oberlin in Ohio, and we did this work with their collection. But these are still proposals, right? But the one in Sterling Museum, everybody thought I am fantasizing, which like there will be no museum signing such contract, taking such responsibility in the future, because if they reject activists, they need to explain themselves. The penalty is they need to make a public statement. They need to say, based on our code of ethics, we disagree with this uprising, we disagree with this request, and we don't want to give it. But that's their then they expose themselves if they contradict with their ethics. So the contract really makes sure the museum stay with its own ethical guideline, no matter what is the uprising about. So they bought it eventually. Long story short, eventually this happened. Sterling Museum in 2020-21 became the first museum actually buying this piece and put it in collection. So it's not sleeping in the collection. It could be activated anytime. 4 years later, fast forward, a group of activists remember this piece. Last year in May, not this May, but the May before, 2024, there was student protests at University of Amsterdam. Yeah, those protests. Yeah, so they actually made massive barricades by the canal. So there was really blocking the streets, and police did intervention. And this lasted a couple of weeks. So some of those people were artists and curators who used to work at the Sterling Museum. They remember the work. They're like, but there was this work, we can ask. So 10 of them come together, and they also reach out to me, and I said, look, I cannot directly, but this is not the idea. You should do it if you want to do it. They're like, we want to request the work. And I say, okay, if you want to, of course, you can, because there's a contract. I send you the contract to read it properly, so you prepare very well, and ask request from the museum. And then they request, a museum have to agree based on the contract. They need to sit down with the activists. So one of the rule in the contract saying that they cannot just say, no, we don't have time. They need to have a meeting. So they do the meeting. And after the meeting, whatever decision they take, they need to make it public. They need to put it on their website. That's the other condition. So museum did like this very long statement after the meeting. They unfortunately, of course, rejected it, and the request was, for in support of pro-Palestine protesters. And suddenly, this museum, actually, the last 5 years, Stedelijk Museum Amsterdam, to give you a bit of context, is a museum did shows and statements directly about political situations. Example, Black Lives Matter. If you go to their website, they still have that statement in support of Black Lives Matter. Example, Ukraine, war in Ukraine. They also had this statements. They even put Ukraine flag on their big screen. So they did direct political statements. And they were very proud of it. And I was very happy that they are doing these things, that they're really doing bold moves and really supporting also artists linked to this crisis and so on. But then they went quiet. So basically, in 2024, they said, no, museum is a neutral place. We don't have political position and we don't do political statements. It's not our thing. And it was a mistake, the ones we did in the past, they said, unfortunately. That's like when a museum collapses, fully contradicts. So this work exposed everything. From the moment they sign the contract, they cannot hide ethically anything. They have to always do it transparently and directly in conversation with the public. So those people who asked, they knew it, and they knew museum would fail. But actually, I was wishing the museum would not fail and do what the contract requires. I really believed in it because I was already happy that they are pioneer enough to sign such a contract. But unfortunately, they were best museum and then became the worst museum from ethical perspective. But this is all they do themselves, right? And selection of the artworks here also curated, of course. Like we don't just do it like as a proposal. Every time, like here, it was very nice exercise in Oberlin. Students involved, we choose the works. Oberlin has this beautiful tradition. They loan the works, original artworks to the students to put in their dormitories for $5. So you can get a very expensive artwork. You can loan it to your living room or your dormitory for a year. And I saw them carrying this original works, I was there for site visit. I was like, what's going on? Like everywhere people carry some artworks to where they live in the campus. And they said they have this tradition. So it was also beautiful to involve the students. I said, do background check for each artist we want to include. We wanted to make the museum look much better than it is, much diverse than it is, much advanced than it is, So in our selection, you see total diversity, you see gender balance, you see all of it. But when you actually go to the actual list of the museum collections, there's usually not enough women artists. There's no like transgender artists. There's no, people of color artists, like almost. But the selections usually help to show the ideal version of the collection for the future when the new decision makers comes and they can actually make a better collection. So this work also facilitates that possibility. So it's really I am shocked sometimes when I go to storage. I saw some works in the storage of Albertine, not Albertine Museum, Allen Memorial Museum. They should not be in the collection, but they are there. And museum would never dare to show those works, but they keep them because they are at some point, somehow they enter the collection, like quite impossible works. But anyways, yeah, this was a good experiment as well. It was also visited by the fire departments and the group of police to check if it is safe. It was also interesting to have the scene. They could walk into the exhibition space and see if it's a work that is safe. You see work from Kiki Simit and the pregnant belly of a woman that's as a shield, also exhibited there as part of the work next to the other stuff. Okay, time-wise?
Yeah, 15 minutes.
But we have the conversation, so
We can do that.
Huh?
after.
We can do that
Yeah.
after?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but I'm coming to the close. I'm coming to the end. I'm not this big normally. It's just the illusion. We made this illusion room with Goshka Majuka, and this was a very experimental invitation by Defnaya as a creator friend. And she said, you two need to collaborate. And this was an institution in Rotterdam. And she said, you have 6 months, you can do whatever you want. It was very open invitation. And Goshka is really experienced artist, actually very like, we work very differently. And we were good friends, but working together was very different. So first we met many times, what we can do together, like a collaboration. And then you realize any idea you will come up with, the collaboration is not possible. So I went back to the curatorial idea. What about we curate each other's works with complete trust? So I asked Goshka, I said, I take the 3 months, you take the 3 months. I ask a list of works from you and you give it to me and you just come to the opening and I do whatever I want with them. And in return, I give you a list of works you want from me and you can do whatever you want with them. And I will come to the opening. And this is an artist who never leave the work alone. Always there when it's produced, always there when it is, watching everything or reprinting and like really like, and every second is there. I can do things from distance, but Goshka never do that. Never put that trust in the process. Needs to be on top of it. So this was the first time she agreed. She went on holiday, worked on some other projects, and she came to the opening. And then I took a set of, so my part was more construction and Goshka's part was more total destruction, like this destroying. Whatever I give her, she wanted to destroy it. I'm like, okay, I give you these ones. And they were, of course, mostly reproducible works, but she really did incredible, like have fun, like one of those anger rooms. Imagine like anger rooms, you go and you destroy something. And in this case, what was destroyed was my works, But I was more poetic and I was more thinking about coincidences. So for instance, both of us, we had work in our own private houses and collections from Miroslav Tichy, is this Czech photographer. And Miroslav Tichy was an outsider artist and discovered by Harald Zeeman, I think in 2005, had the first show, and then he passed away in 2011. And we had this show in 2017. But I was in a show I was in Toronto for a show. I just wanted to go to flea market to check things. And then I entered a shop and I saw there was some photographs hanging there. And I saw they were signed. And I saw this was definitely Tichy. And the guy was selling it very cheap. I asked him, like, do you know who is this? And he knew actually who is the artist. They just didn't think it has such value. But if they go to Christie's website, they would see that this photograph would be around 7,000 to 10,000 pounds or, dollars, which I paid only $8 to buy it. So I got it for $8. And I was with the curator. She also bought some. So we had only some coins with us. We didn't have, there was no cash machine. So we had some coins. We bought the works. We went, there was $5 left. We went to celebrate to eat this rainbow cake. And then while eating the cake, we thought, are we stupid? Why don't we buy one more each, And whatever money left, we put all the coins on the table. It wasn't enough to buy 2 more. So we had to go back the guy and bargain and bought 2 more, So we each had 2 Miroslav Tichys. Meanwhile, Goshka was contacted by a dealer, by a representative or somebody who had a lot of Miroslav Tichys, was doing swaps with artists. So she has a lot of Tichy works in her collection. And that's why we put the cake. And at the end, she also destroyed the cake in the second part of the exhibition. And this is what I did with her famous piece inspired from the United Nations meeting when it was announced that, there was this weapons of mass destructions in Iran, in Iraq. And these moments, she turned it into a bronze sculpture, and I just put her bronze sculptures on balance. And this is some visitors playing with it. Okay, I'm finishing up. Maybe this is the last one, pretty much. Jump up pieces, basically, again, picking up works from the collections, different museums collections, and hanging them not in eye level, but way above the eye level. So instead of bringing the works to the human condition, you have to jump to reach the eye level. So I reversed the situation, put this little trampolines, and this was first in Skopje, and I did it in 5 other institutions. It's very simple work, but it really normally people don't take so much time. If you go to a museum, you don't spend time. You just pass by quickly. And with this work, they spend a lot of time in front of each work. This is another moment. So I was asked to do this in Kharkiv in Ukraine. Kharkiv is the border town to Russia, and it's bombed every day since the war started. And they have an art center called Yermilov Art Center, and they want to do this work. And I said, look, is there any collection in Kharkiv that was evacuated, because of the war? They said yes, there was a literature museum collection, and there was a collection, a private collection. They had to take it to somewhere else in Ukraine because they don't want the works to be destroyed, And then I said, okay, give me the list of these works that were evacuated from Kharkiv. And they gave me the list. I picked 3 artworks. I made reproductions of them. And I called the work Safe Return of the Evacuated. So these are my reproductions of the works, from 60s, 70s. One is more recent, Alla Hoska, Zaya Lerman, and Serhiy Zadan. 3 Ukrainian artists, and one of them alive. So Serhiy went to the exhibition, saw the reproduction of his collage piece. And he was I heard he was very happy about it. So I thought, okay, these works, reproductions goes, and they're exhibited with this jump up piece I have until the war over, until they don't return the originals, they can keep them. So when the war is over, they can send it to me. So the works are there until the war is over, and people can still experience their own heritage through my reproductions. And when the war is over, they can experience the originals back again. So this was the last one I wanted to tell you, and we can move to the questions. Yeah, thank you.
So for people who are watching online, you can put a question or comment for Ahmet at the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. I'm just going to start for a moment and quickly open it up. So thinking about this idea of the artist as curator, the way that you've talked about your work, it's so collaborative. I mean, of course, we think about curators as being collaborative with artists, but it's a very different thing here because the curator is not an artist. So it's a different kind of relationship. Can you talk about that a little bit? Thinking about the curatorial process, the way you think about a collection. I mean, if we go back in history to maybe it's 30 years ago already, the curator Robert Storr famously did a show when he became a curator at MoMA, in which he was, I think, the first curator to intervene in MoMA's collection with contemporary artists' work. So I can't give exact examples, but say there's a room of Cézanne's, and he would take down a Cézanne and put a contemporary artist amongst the works, which is something that is quite common now. But to think about that idea, this is intervention of another kind because you're intervening with another artist. So can you talk a little bit about the way that process works? Because there's another collaborator, it feels like in all of your work, which is the performativity that takes place so that the public is also an equivalent creator in the work.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm invited to exhibitions that are already very artistic. Curator has such an artistic idea. It's exactly what I'm doing, but they wouldn't execute the artistic part, but they would let the artist decide. But still, if a concept comes like this, like, hey, we have a show without audience in Fukushima and make it work in here, you know. So this is already artistic concepts. It's already an unusual exhibition in time. And I just only respect that. I respect that curator will come up with an idea like that. It's not just having a title and writing a concept and putting a group of artists together. You invite the artist to a specific situation. Like in years ago in Sweden, there was a show, Jakob Fabricius did it. It was called Autostop. So every artist was asked to come up with an idea on the road. And we all had to design concept based on this artistic concept. So I call it like artistic curating kind of thing. Like it's really because people know me as artist and I call it as an artwork. In other case, if I was the curator, I would call this as a show I curated. You know, it would be pretty much the same thing, you know, most of the time. So I appreciate when a lot of invitations or the Rome invitation came, like I had no desire or plan to do that, but then they said work with the collection, and now that evolved with all this entire set of works I have done afterwards. I found it interesting. I found it possible to really work with directly others' artworks. Until that moment, I was thinking maximum an artist can do is refer indirectly, you know, refer a work without including the original work, only maybe make a version of it, and you know, never really having a direct dialogue with the original work, because who has the access? Only museums and the curators have the access to original works. As an artist, do I have access? Normally not, but I saw during the process I do have an access, and a lot of artists are, if they are living also, you can directly contact them and they can they agree with that. Sometimes I test it, like the Bakunin's piece, I included works in collaboration with the museum and see how artists react. And some of them likes it, some of them like, I want my work out of this stupid concept, you know, I want it on the wall, you know, I don't want another artist and come and ruin it. Well, if you don't want another context, your work goes into another context, you really have to write an instruction saying that this work only can be hung on the wall, on a gray wall, on a white wall, or whatever. Some artists do that, and I also respect that. If they decide that limitation and they want to keep it limited, fine. But if an artwork doesn't have that limitation, we have all the freedom as curators and as artists to do whatever we want to do with them, as long as we can return it as it is, you know, but in the process, it can become anything.
I'm going to just open it up since it's 7:30 now. Comments, questions from anyone? Naomi.
I just say I love the humor in your work. The way you balance the image of the curator and the seriousness. But you seem to have immense access to the institutions that you're critiquing. So I was just wondering how you walk that line, like with the interns, like clearly pointing out what they don't have, but the institutions like stay with you doing that. Like I guess I was like, how did you become brave enough to do this, or how do you handle like pushback when you like want to do something and the institution's like anything about it?
Well, there's a lot of pushback. So I became a negotiator. You know, one of the things I think it was written there, I started as an artist, but I also became such a negotiator. But I don't negotiate for my own desire. That is the advantage. The advantage is that when you are there just negotiating because you want, you know, you are a prince and you have a concert, you want your backstage room has purple walls and, you know, this kind of stuff. This is different than what I am requesting. So when I'm requesting for the interns, it's different than if I request I want a VIP space with a chocolate fountain and massage service for myself and my artistic team. No one would do it, you know. But when you do that, still it's challenging. Still, they don't say yes right away. But I have entire interns, they are supporting the idea, and they also support the idea to continue that. And I am comfortable enough to hand over to another artist, which if they want, and which happened, you know, after the intern VIP launch, they enjoyed it so much. They commissioned a Canadian Iranian artist, like randomly, you know, many artists they commissions, and this artist we never met also before. She just wrote me. She's like, "Can I do your project again?" Like, sure. But then she was too ambitious. She wanted to add underpaid workers. She really put so many. I was like, be careful. You need to negotiate still well. You need to, you know, keep this central space we got. You know, they can push you somewhere on the side. They can make it not visible at all, even though you are in the same institution, same organization. This happens all the time. They like it on the paper. They like it in their yearly report, but they don't want anyone to see it. You know, then you have to kind of make it visible again if the institution is not sincere about it. You know, they are like, oh, we want to look critical and we want to do this, but they don't really mean it. And when they don't mean it, still this in between negotiations, you can also still expose that and make it visible. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Thank you so much, Ahmet. I was just curious about how this curatorial kind of art practice started for you. Yeah, because you're an artist, so I believe you started out like an artist, you did that, and then just something changed, or like what?
Well, I was telling this story today during one of my studio visits. You know, when I was 15, I did encyclopedia, art encyclopedia, you know, because there was none in my hometown. So I was stealing pages from my uncle's library, from general culture encyclopedias secretly to make an art encyclopedia. So this was not because I knew contemporary art is existing or anything. I just needed that book. And when you need something, you invent it. You know, you don't have to wait and cry. Oh, there's no resource. There's no source book. There wasn't such library behind me at the time. You know, so I would have died for a library like that at the time. And I'm still like, I remember those moments. So it's really important to remain inventive. So for me, that is also a curatorial practice. You just put chronologically in the way you think the chronology is, a lot of artworks, put it some in historical context. And I didn't have enough knowledge. I had no contemporary knowledge, but with my existing Baroque Renaissance knowledge and early modernist knowledge, I was trying to make some art book, you know, with selected works that was randomly found.
Does that book still exist?
Yes, I lost it for 15 years, and a friend of mine made a surprise from high school. He said, I have something for you, and he returned it to me. I have it. So I am so happy to have it. And I'm making a volume 2 with my current knowledge, with found magazines.
Anyone else?
How did you start as an artist, and what have you done back in Turkey, as you are from there, being a Kurdish person in Turkey? I know the political situation, and what was your work about there?
Well, I was talking about art saving lives. You know, for me, art was always something beyond just making it, you know, and I wanted to be a painter at the time. I went to fine art high school and did 8 years painting practice, bachelor degree, you know, and then people know me as conceptual artist, but I was really dedicated painter, and that was my goal, right? At that time, even though I was trying to make all these reproductions and paintings, it was political for the reason it helped me cross borders. It helped me survive clashes, civil war, and all this stuff. They were not touching me at all. Nobody from any side was touching me because I was the painter. Painter was somehow protected by by everybody. For some reason, everybody respected it. They didn't know what it is even. They were like, oh, this is something to respect, something to care. And not because financially, like they didn't think something you can live from, but if somebody is an artist, it's something to care. you know, even in the middle of the war. So you kind of pass all these challenging situations, and I saw that art can really do that, you know, in very difficult moments. There's a work by my friend Alban Muya about his father in Kosovo in 1999 NATO bombing and Serbian invasion. You know, they take all the Albanians, put in a schoolroom, classroom, and all these Albanian men in the room, and then the Serbian general comes and he says like, anybody can make drawing or painting, and they all show him. It's like, yeah, he's a professor at the art school. It's like, can you make my portrait? And then he makes the portrait on a charcoal, you know, board, and then he says, you stay, everybody else goes to the truck to this unknown location where they will never return. And he stays, he survives. So there's a lot of stories in this kind of places where you can see the art is not only for the sake of art, but it is really by default political thing. That's why for me to call art political art is kind of nonsense, because there is no form of art for me that has nothing to do with politics. Like any form of art, even painting, easily is political when it's the right time, when it's the right location. It has that function.
There are a lot of questions, so I'm going to read them
online questions
aloud. So someone with the Kafka asks just K as their name says, I'm wondering if you are receiving a lot of commissions from museums to work with their collection because of all the previous projects. And does it bother you to get the invitations now than to making the conscious decision to request the work with the collection?
Well, it's it's getting harder and harder because the type of work I do scares the museums a lot, you know. So that doesn't create more invitation necessarily. So I also, luckily, I know how to work with medium scale institutions, small scale institutions, or no budgets and very big budgets at the same time. I don't limit myself to those invitations. When I don't have access to the original works or collections, I can still produce art, you know, I can still make those no budget art when I was doing like when I was 15. So that enables me to continue production. So I don't rely myself into institutions. That's why I can negotiate with the institutions. If I make myself dependent on those institutions, I cannot negotiate. I have to agree with a lot of regulations they have or political limitations they have. And then my art practice would have ended many times because of the concept and challenges I did towards the institutions. And I always remind that this is for their good. If the institutions wants to have a purpose, a reason, they should come to me. If they don't care about purpose and a reason to exist, they can find many other artists to work with.
So Kimberly is asking if you've had the opportunity to use the strategy of artist as curator in Turkey.
When I was student, yes, I was literally trying to support my artist friends at the art school. I curated 3 shows actually as a curator at the time. I just don't name them and don't put them in my CV. It was something I thought I can try, and it worked. I just walked into a state museum and they gave me a slot and I put my friend's work there. But I realized at the time as a curator, I mean, it was whatever you can do kind of situation. So it was before we had any museums, contemporary art museum open in Turkey. So after, you know, I was still a student and they were starting opening, we just had to invent something. So it wasn't like I want to be a curator and do that. Then I realized if my friends don't have the potential, you know, to continue with their own motivation, it's not even enough that you want to do something for your friends and then suddenly you're a curator or something. They just have to also fix their problems and issues themselves. So it's not enough that somebody has a big potential. It's also about like how you find ways to activate your potential, you know, as a curator, as an artist, as an organizer.
So Jenna is saying that I think we all love your sense of humor. She says she loves your sense of humor, wondering if you've explored raising humanity's consciousness directly as a matter of urgency to change the world.
If you know that person, please send me the contact. I am not sure I can do that that far, but nothing is impossible. We can do that together.
Okay. Last thing. So an anonymous person says, I'm currently working on a curatorial project exploring film archives through a series of workshops with artists and other members of the community, with the outcome being an exhibition. The artists are meant to guide other participants who aren't artists to create their own work. How do you think they can go about this?
That's an advantage, not a disadvantage. Whenever I collaborate with directly other artists, it ended with most of the time with drama. But when you work with a firefighter or lawyer or mixologist or hairdresser, they are very modest. They are like, oh, I'm not the creative one. I'm like, you are the creative one. You are just doing the work, not only executing it. We think together, we come up with the idea together, but they never claim this egocentric authorship thing. And then you can really skip that part, like having this music band and every member wants to do their solo album like quickly after one success. They are really like, I have this boring job, and finally you brought the creativity in it. And I tell them, no, it's your creativity. Without you, I cannot do the work. So this mutual modesty creates a lot of incredible work. So I'm sure there will be interesting stuff coming out of that if the artists behave that way.
Other final things
We can
that
maybe
anybody
end now
would
because
ask?
it's getting very
No?
long. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.